The afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows of Kensington Palace as Prince William walked slowly through his mother's former private quarters. These rooms had been sealed for years, untouched since Princess Diana's tragic death in 1997. The dust particles danced in the golden light, creating an almost magical atmosphere that reminded him of childhood days when his mother would read him bedtime stories in this very room. William had finally decided it was time to go through Diana's personal belongings. The decision hadn't been easy. For over 2 decades, he had avoided this painful task. But now, as a father himself, he felt ready to face the memories and perhaps find some treasures to pass down to his own children. His wife Catherine had offered to accompany him, but this was something he needed to do alone. As he opened the first antique wardrobe, the faint scent of his mother's perfume still lingered on the silk scarves and evening gowns. Each item told a story of a life cut tragically short. William carefully moved through her clothes, remembering public appearances where she had worn these very outfits. His mother had always been so elegant, so graceful, even during the most difficult times of her life. Behind a row of evening dresses, William's fingers touched something unexpected. There was a small wooden panel that seemed different from the rest of the wardrobe's back wall. When he pressed it gently, it clicked and swung open, revealing a hidden compartment that he never knew existed. His heart began to race as he realized his mother had kept secrets even from her own sons. Inside the secret space, William discovered a leather jewelry box that looked old and expensive. The craftsmanship was exquisite, with intricate gold details and what appeared to be the Spencer family crest embossed on the lid. His hands trembled slightly as he lifted it out, wondering what treasures his mother had hidden away and why she had felt the need to keep them secret. When he opened the box, William gasped audibly. Inside were some of the most magnificent pieces of jewelry he had ever seen. There were diamond necklaces that sparkled like stars, emerald earrings that seemed to glow with inner fire, and rings with precious stones so large and perfect they took his breath away. But these weren't just any jewels. William recognized some of them from old photographs of his great-grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. As he examined each piece more carefully, William began to understand the significance of his discovery. These were not just beautiful jewels. They were pieces that had been mysteriously missing from the royal collection for years. Some had been gifts from foreign dignitaries. Others were family heirlooms that had supposedly been lost or stolen. Yet here they were, carefully preserved in his mother's secret hiding place. Among the jewelry, William found several handwritten notes in his mother's familiar handwriting. The papers were yellowed with age, but the ink was still clear. As he read them, a shocking story began to unfold. Diana had not stolen these jewels, as some might assume. Instead, she had been protecting them from someone within the royal family, who had been systematically selling off pieces from the royal collection for personal gain. The notes revealed that Diana had discovered this theft years before her death and had secretly rescued these particular pieces to prevent them from being sold. She had been planning to return them to the Queen but wanted to gather more evidence about who was responsible for the thefts. The last note was dated just weeks before her fatal car accident in Paris, suggesting she never had the chance to complete her investigation. William sat in stunned silence, trying to process what he had just learned. His mother had been protecting the royal family's heritage, even while her own marriage was falling apart and the press was attacking her daily. She had risked her reputation to save these priceless artifacts, and no one had ever known about her brave actions. As he continued reading through Diana's notes, one name appeared repeatedly as the suspected culprit behind the missing jewels. The revelation made William's blood run cold, because this person was still very much a part of the royal family today. The implications were enormous, and William realized he now held information that could shake the very foundations of the monarchy. The weight of his discovery pressed heavily on his shoulders. These weren't just family jewels. They were evidence of a crime that had been covered up for decades. William knew he had to act, but he also understood that exposing the truth could destroy relationships and bring scandal to the royal family at a time when they were trying to modernize and maintain public support. Looking at his mother's photograph on the nearby table, William made a silent promise. He would not let her sacrifice be in vain. Diana had risked everything to protect these treasures, and now it was his responsibility to ensure that justice was finally served. But first he needed to decide how to handle this explosive information and who he could trust with such a dangerous secret. The golden afternoon light was fading as William carefully placed the jewelry box back in its hiding place. He needed time to think, to plan his next move carefully. One thing was certain. The truth about the missing royal jewels was about to come to light, and when it did, it would change everything. The question was whether the royal family would survive the scandal that was sure to follow. 3 days had passed since William's shocking discovery, and he had barely slept. The secret weighed heavily on his mind as he went through the motions of his royal duties. During public appearances, he found himself studying the faces of family members, wondering who among them could be trusted with the truth he now carried. Catherine noticed her husband's distress immediately. After 24 years of marriage, she could read his moods better than anyone. That evening, as they sat in their private sitting room at Adelaide Cottage, she gently confronted him about his obvious anxiety. "William, you've been different since you went through your mother's things," Catherine said softly, setting down her cup of tea. "I can see something is troubling you deeply. You know you can tell me anything." William looked at his wife's concerned face and realized he couldn't carry this burden alone. Catherine had always been his anchor, the one person he trusted completely. After ensuring their children were safely asleep and the staff had retired for the evening, William told Catherine everything about his discovery. Catherine listened in stunned silence as William showed her photographs he had secretly taken of the jewelry and Diana's handwritten notes. Her face grew pale as she realized the implications of what they had uncovered. The evidence was clear. Someone had been stealing from the royal collection for decades, and Diana had died before she could expose the truth. "We have to do something." "William," Catherine whispered, her voice filled with determination, "your mother risked everything to protect these pieces. We can't let her sacrifice be meaningless." Together, they spent hours analyzing Diana's notes and researching the missing pieces online. What they discovered was even more shocking than they had initially thought. The stolen jewelry was worth millions of pounds, and some pieces had already appeared in private auction houses around the world, sold to anonymous buyers. The evidence pointed clearly to one person who had both access to the royal collection and the connections needed to sell the pieces discreetly. The suspect was someone who had been welcomed into the royal family despite initial resistance, someone who had gradually gained influence and trust over the years. William decided their first step should be to consult with Sir Christopher Geit, a former private secretary to the Queen who had always been loyal to the monarchy and was known for his discretion. They arranged a private meeting at a small cafe in Windsor, away from the palace where conversations might be overheard. Sir Christopher's reaction to their evidence was immediate and grave. He confirmed that there had indeed been suspicions about missing pieces over the years, but investigations had always been quietly dropped without explanation. He revealed that the Queen herself had noticed some items were gone but had been advised by certain courtiers that pursuing the matter might cause unwanted publicity. "Your mother was braver than any of us realized," Sir Christopher told William. "She was risking her position in the family to protect something that belonged to all of us. We owe it to her memory to see this through to the end." With Sir Christopher's help, they began to plan their approach carefully. They needed more evidence before they could make any accusations, and they had to be prepared for the explosive reaction that would surely follow. The person they suspected would not go down without a fight, and they had powerful allies within the royal household. Their investigation led them to contact several auction houses that specialized in royal and aristocratic jewelry. Using their connections and Sir Christopher's influence, they managed to trace several pieces that had been sold over the past 15 years. Each sale had been carefully orchestrated to avoid suspicion, with the pieces being sold in different countries and through different channels. Meanwhile, William continued his regular royal duties, but he found it increasingly difficult to interact normally with the family member they suspected. Every conversation felt loaded with hidden meaning. Every smile seemed false. He began to notice small details that had escaped his attention before. Expensive new jewelry that appeared without explanation, frequent unexplained trips abroad, and a lifestyle that seemed beyond what their official income should support. The breakthrough came when Catherine discovered a crucial piece of evidence while researching one of the missing necklaces online. She found a photograph from a recent charity gala where the suspected thief was wearing what appeared to be one of the stolen pieces. The necklace was supposed to be safely stored in the royal collection, yet there it was, sparkling around the neck of someone who should never have had access to it. William stared at the photograph for a long time, feeling a mixture of anger and sadness. The evidence was now undeniable, but proving it would require confronting someone who had become a central figure in the royal family. The personal cost would be enormous, and the public scandal could damage the monarchy's reputation for generations. That night, William called his brother Harry, despite their strained relationship in recent years. This was bigger than their personal differences. It was about protecting their mother's legacy and ensuring that justice was finally served. The conversation was difficult, but Harry agreed to support William's investigation and help gather additional evidence. As they prepared for the next phase of their plan, William felt his mother's presence guiding him. Diana had always fought for what was right, even when it cost her personally. Now it was his turn to be brave, to risk everything for the truth. The stolen jewels would be returned to where they belonged, and the person responsible would face the consequences of their actions. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the royal family to its core. William knew there was no turning back now. Too much was at stake, and too many people were counting on him to do the right thing. His mother's secret would finally be revealed, and with it, a scandal that had been hidden in the shadows for far too long. William knew he needed more concrete evidence before making any accusations. The photograph Catherine had found was compelling, but it wouldn't be enough to prove systematic theft. He decided to take a significant risk and enlisted the help of James, the longtime head of security at Buckingham Palace, who had served the royal family faithfully for over 30 years. James had always suspected something was amiss with the royal collection. Over the years, he had noticed discrepancies in the inventory records and had tried to raise concerns, but his reports had been mysteriously buried in bureaucratic channels. When William approached him with Diana's evidence, James felt a mixture of vindication and anger. "I knew something wasn't right. Your Royal Highness," James said quietly as they met in a secure room deep within Windsor Castle. "But every time I tried to investigate, I was told to focus on other matters. Someone has been very careful to cover their tracks." Together, they devised a plan to conduct a complete audit of the royal jewelry collection. James would arrange for a private security firm to assist with the inventory, people who had no connection to the current royal household staff. This would prevent any advance warning from reaching the person they suspected. The audit took place over a weekend when most of the royal family was away on various engagements. William made sure he was present throughout the process, watching as experts carefully catalogued each piece and compared it to historical records. The results were even worse than they had feared. Dozens of pieces were missing, representing millions of pounds in stolen heritage. Among the missing items were several pieces that had special sentimental value to the royal family. A sapphire brooch that had belonged to Queen Victoria, diamond earrings that were a wedding gift from foreign royalty, and a ruby necklace that had been in the family for over 2 centuries. Each missing piece represented not just monetary value, but irreplaceable history. Armed with this evidence, William felt it was time to bring his father, King Charles, into the investigation. The meeting took place in Charles's private study at Clarence House, away from the prying eyes and ears that seemed to be everywhere in the royal palaces. William had prepared carefully for this conversation, knowing his father's reaction could determine the success or failure of their entire investigation. King Charles listened in stunned silence as William presented the evidence. The king's face grew increasingly grave as he realized the scope of the theft and the implications for the monarchy. When William showed him Diana's handwritten notes, Charles closed his eyes and remained silent for several long minutes. "Your mother was always braver than the rest of us," Charles finally said, his voice heavy with emotion. "She saw what we were all too blind or too afraid to see. We failed her then, but we won't fail her now." The king immediately authorized a full investigation, bringing in discreet legal experts and forensic accountants to trace the stolen jewelry. He also made a difficult decision. They would need to involve law enforcement despite the potential for public scandal. The theft of royal property was a serious crime that couldn't be covered up, regardless of who was responsible. Meanwhile, the suspected thief seemed to sense that something was changing within the royal household. They began asking subtle questions about security procedures, and seemed nervous during family gatherings. William noticed increased secrecy in their behavior and several unexplained trips abroad, possibly to dispose of remaining stolen pieces. The investigation team made a crucial breakthrough when they traced several pieces to a high-end jewelry dealer in Geneva. The dealer, initially reluctant to cooperate, eventually provided records showing that the same person had been selling royal jewelry through their establishment for over a decade. The sales had been conducted using false documentation, but security cameras from recent transactions provided clear evidence of the seller's identity. Catherine played a vital role in gathering evidence by carefully monitoring social media and public appearances. She created a detailed timeline of when specific pieces had last been seen in official royal functions and when they had appeared at auction houses. Her meticulous research revealed a pattern of theft that coincided with major royal events. When the collection's security procedures might be more relaxed, the evidence was overwhelming, but William knew that confronting the thief directly could result in more pieces being destroyed or sold quickly. Instead, they decided to set a trap. James arranged for a fake inventory check to be announced, suggesting that a major audit of the jewelry collection would take place in 2 weeks. This gave the thief time to panic and potentially make mistakes. The plan worked perfectly. Within days of the announcement, security cameras captured the suspected thief accessing restricted areas of Buckingham Palace during off hours. They were seen removing items from secure storage areas and later leaving the palace with a small bag that hadn't been there when they arrived. William felt sick watching the security footage. This was someone he had trusted, someone who had been welcomed into family celebrations and private moments. The betrayal ran deeper than just theft. It was a violation of the bonds that held the royal family together. The final piece of evidence came when law enforcement traced a recently sold necklace to a buyer in Monaco. The necklace had been one of Diana's favorites, often worn during her charity work. Seeing it listed in a private sale catalog made William's determination even stronger. His mother's memory was being desecrated along with the family's heritage. King Charles made the difficult decision to inform the Queen's private secretary about the investigation, knowing that this level of scandal would require careful management. The monarchy had survived many crises throughout history, but the theft of royal jewels by a family member would test public confidence in ways they had never experienced before. As they prepared for the final confrontation, William reflected on how his mother would have handled this situation. Diana had always been direct and honest, even when it caused her personal pain. She had hidden these jewels not for personal gain, but to protect something larger than herself. Now it was time for her son to show the same courage and do what was right, regardless of the personal cost. The morning of the confrontation arrived with an unusually heavy fog blanketing London. William had barely slept, rehearsing in his mind how he would present the evidence and what he would say when faced with denials or attempts to shift blame. King Charles had insisted on being present for this crucial moment, understanding that the monarchy itself was at stake. They had chosen to meet in the blue drawing room at Buckingham Palace, a formal setting that would emphasize the gravity of the situation. William arrived early with Catherine, who had become instrumental in organizing their evidence. She carried a leather briefcase containing photographs, auction records, security footage, and most importantly, Diana's handwritten notes that had started this entire investigation. James positioned additional security personnel discreetly around the palace, prepared for any attempt to flee or destroy evidence. Legal representatives were standing by, ready to take official statements and begin formal proceedings. The atmosphere was tense but determined. Everyone involved knew they were about to witness a historic moment in royal family history. When Camilla arrived for what she believed was a routine family meeting, she immediately sensed something was wrong. The formal arrangement of chairs, the presence of King Charles looking unusually stern, and William's barely controlled anger all signaled that this was no ordinary gathering. She took her seat with visible uncertainty, glancing around the room for clues about what was about to unfold. William began by explaining that they had been conducting an investigation into missing items from the royal collection. He watched Camilla's face carefully as he spoke, noting the slight tightening around her eyes and the way her hands clasped together more tightly. Her initial response was concern for the security of the collection, asking appropriate questions about when the thefts might have occurred. As William presented the first pieces of evidence, Camilla maintained her composure, suggesting that perhaps former staff members or security personnel might be responsible. She offered to help with the investigation in any way possible, even volunteering to review her own access records to help establish timelines. Her performance was convincing, but William noticed subtle signs of growing nervousness. The turning point came when Catherine opened Diana's jewelry box and placed it on the table between them. Camilla's face went completely white as she recognized the ornate container, and her eyes darted involuntarily toward the exit. The guilty reaction was unmistakable, but she quickly tried to recover, asking innocently about the significance of the box. William then read aloud from his mother's notes, his voice growing stronger with each revelation. Diana had documented Camilla's access to restricted areas, unexplained absences during inventory periods, and even suspicious conversations she had overheard about private sales and discreet buyers. The evidence was methodical and damning, painting a picture of systematic theft over many years. When confronted with the security footage showing her removing items from secure storage, Camilla's composure finally cracked. She attempted to claim that she had been trying to protect the pieces, suggesting that storage conditions were inadequate and that she had been planning to inform security about vulnerabilities in the system. Her explanations became increasingly desperate and contradictory. King Charles remained silent throughout most of the confrontation, but his disappointment was visible in every line of his face. This was the woman he had married, someone he had defended against public criticism and brought into the heart of the royal family. The betrayal was personal as well as institutional, affecting not just the monarchy but his own judgment and relationships. The evidence from the Geneva dealer proved impossible to explain away. When shown photographs of herself conducting transactions at the jewelry store, Camilla finally stopped trying to maintain her innocence. Instead, she shifted to justification, claiming that the royal family had more wealth than they could ever use while others struggled with financial difficulties. Her admission that she had been selling the jewelry to fund her personal lifestyle and help her children from her first marriage was met with stunned silence. She had betrayed the trust of the royal family to support a standard of living that her official allowances couldn't maintain. The revelation that some of the money had also gone to gambling debts made the situation even more sordid. William felt a mixture of anger and sadness as he listened to Camilla's justifications. This woman had been present at family celebrations, had played a role in his children's lives, and had been trusted with access to centuries of royal heritage. Her betrayal felt personal, but he also understood that justice had to be served regardless of family relationships. Catherine presented the final piece of evidence, the photograph of Camilla wearing one of the stolen necklaces at a recent charity event. The image was undeniable proof that she had not only stolen the pieces, but had been bold enough to wear them publicly, confident that no one would dare to question her right to royal jewelry. Faced with overwhelming evidence and no way to maintain her denials, Camilla finally broke down completely. She admitted to years of systematic theft, explaining how she had gradually learned the security procedures and taken advantage of her trusted position within the family. She revealed that she had sold over 40 pieces of jewelry, some of which were now in private collections around the world and might never be recovered. The room fell silent as the magnitude of her crimes became clear. This wasn't opportunistic theft but a carefully planned operation that had been undermining the royal collection for years. The historical and cultural value of the lost pieces was incalculable, representing not just monetary worth but irreplaceable links to British heritage. King Charles finally spoke, his voice heavy with emotion and disappointment. He informed Camilla that legal proceedings would begin immediately, and that her position within the royal family was terminated, effective immediately. The personal cost of this decision was evident in his face, but his duty to the crown and to justice left him no choice. As security personnel arrived to escort Camilla from the palace, she made one final plea for understanding, claiming that she had always intended to return the pieces eventually. Her words fell on deaf ears. The evidence showed a pattern of calculated theft that had continued for years without any sign of remorse or intention to confess. William looked at his mother's jewelry box sitting on the table and felt a profound sense of completion. Diana's courage in protecting these pieces had finally been vindicated, and her sacrifice had not been in vain. The truth was painful, but it was also liberating. No more secrets, no more stolen heritage, and finally, justice for his mother's brave actions. The immediate aftermath of Camilla's confession sent shockwaves through the royal household. Within hours, legal proceedings were set in motion, and law enforcement agencies in multiple countries were contacted to help trace and recover the stolen jewelry. William found himself at the center of the biggest royal scandal in decades, but he felt a strange sense of peace knowing that his mother's truth was finally being acknowledged. The first priority was damage control and recovery efforts. Catherine worked closely with international art recovery specialists to track down the stolen pieces. Each item required careful documentation and legal procedures to prove ownership and demand return from current holders. Some pieces had been sold to legitimate collectors who had no knowledge of their criminal origin, making recovery efforts complex and delicate. King Charles faced the most difficult decision of his reign: how to handle the public revelation of this scandal. Royal communications advisors recommended a complete cover-up, suggesting that Camilla could be quietly divorced and the thefts blamed on unknown criminals. However, William argued passionately for complete transparency, believing that the royal family needed to demonstrate accountability and honesty to maintain public trust. The decision was made to release a carefully crafted statement explaining that a comprehensive audit of royal assets had uncovered evidence of systematic theft, spanning many years. The statement praised Princess Diana's previously unknown efforts to protect royal heritage and announced that legal proceedings were underway to recover all stolen items. Camilla's name was not initially mentioned, but her immediate absence from all royal functions made the truth obvious to royal watchers. Public reaction was swift and intense. The British press, who had long speculated about various royal family dramas, found themselves covering a story that exceeded even their wildest theories. Headlines screamed about betrayal, theft, and the vindication of Princess Diana, while editorial writers debated the implications for the monarchy's future. Surprisingly, public sympathy largely aligned with William and the royal family, rather than with Camilla. Diana remained beloved by the British people, and the revelation that she had secretly protected royal treasures only enhanced her posthumous reputation. Many people expressed anger that Camilla had been trusted with such access after the way she had been involved in Charles and Diana's marriage. Breakdown International. Law enforcement cooperation proved crucial in tracking down the stolen pieces. Interpol assisted in coordinating efforts across multiple countries, while specialized art crime units worked to identify buyers and facilitate returns. The Swiss authorities were particularly helpful, providing detailed records from the Geneva dealer that had been Camilla's primary outlet for stolen jewelry. The recovery process revealed the true scope of Camilla's crimes. She had been systematic in her thefts, targeting pieces that were rarely displayed publicly and wouldn't be immediately missed. Her knowledge of royal protocols and security procedures had allowed her to operate undetected for years, carefully timing her thefts to coincide with periods when inventory checks were less frequent. William insisted on personally visiting some of the auction houses and collectors who had unknowingly purchased stolen pieces. These meetings were emotionally charged as he explained the historical significance of each item and why its return was so important. Most collectors cooperated willingly once they understood the circumstances, though some required legal pressure to surrender valuable pieces they had purchased in good faith. One particularly poignant recovery involved a diamond tiara that had belonged to Queen Mary. The piece had been sold to a private collector in New York who had displayed it in their home for several years. When William explained that this was one of the pieces his mother had specifically mentioned in her notes as being culturally significant, the collector immediately agreed to return it without compensation. Catherine played a crucial role in managing the emotional impact of these revelations on their children. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis needed to understand why someone they had known as a grandmother figure was suddenly absent from family gatherings. Catherine explained the situation in age-appropriate terms, emphasizing the importance of honesty and protecting things that belong to everyone. The investigation also revealed how Camilla had used her position to manipulate palace staff and security procedures. She had convinced guards that she had special permission to access certain areas, and had exploited the natural deference that staff showed to royal family members. Several longtime employees expressed guilt about not questioning her activities more closely. As more stolen pieces were recovered, William made the decision to create a special exhibition at Buckingham Palace showcasing the returned jewelry alongside Diana's story. The exhibition would honor his mother's courage while educating the public about the importance of preserving royal heritage. It would also serve as a transparent acknowledgement of what had happened and the steps being taken to prevent future thefts. Legal experts working on the case discovered that the total value of stolen items exceeded £10 million, making this one of the largest art thefts in British history. The complexity of the crimes, spanning multiple countries and involving sophisticated networks of dealers and collectors, demonstrated how carefully planned Camilla's operation had been. King Charles struggled with the personal betrayal, but found strength in focusing on his duty to the crown and the British people. He publicly praised William's courage in pursuing the investigation, despite the personal cost, and announced new security protocols that would make future thefts much more difficult. He also established a fund to compensate legitimate purchasers who were returning stolen pieces. The royal family began the process of healing and rebuilding trust. William emerged as a leader in this effort, using his mother's story to demonstrate the importance of doing what was right, even when it was difficult. His handling of the crisis earned widespread public respect and strengthened his position as a future king who could be trusted to protect both royal traditions and democratic values. As the dust began to settle, William reflected on how his mother would have felt about these developments. Diana had always believed in truth and justice even when it came at personal cost. Her secret protection of these royal treasures had finally been vindicated, and her courage was being recognized by people around the world. The stolen jewels were coming home, and with them, a renewed sense of integrity for the royal family. 6 months after the initial confrontation, the criminal trial of Camilla Parker Bowles began at the Old Bailey in London. The case had attracted international attention, with media outlets from around the world sending reporters to cover what many were calling the trial of the century. William had been dreading this moment, knowing that every detail of the family's private pain would be exposed to public scrutiny. The prosecution presented a meticulous case built on the evidence that William and his team had gathered. Diana's handwritten notes were entered as crucial evidence, with handwriting experts confirming their authenticity. The security footage, auction house records, and recovered jewelry pieces created an overwhelming narrative of systematic theft and betrayal that spanned more than a decade. Camilla's defense team attempted to portray her as a victim of financial pressure and unrealistic expectations placed on royal family members. They argued that her allowance from the royal family was insufficient to maintain the lifestyle expected of her position, and that the pressure to appear wealthy and successful had driven her to desperate measures. However, the evidence of her gambling debts and lavish personal spending undermined these claims. William was called to testify about discovering his mother's secret collection and the investigation that followed. Standing in the witness box, he spoke eloquently about Diana's courage in protecting royal heritage and the emotional impact of discovering that someone trusted by the family had been stealing from them for years. His testimony was measured and dignified, earning respect even from those who had previously criticized the royal family. The most dramatic moment of the trial came when Camilla herself took the stand in her own defense. She attempted to express remorse for her actions while still trying to justify them as necessary for her family's financial security. Her testimony revealed a complex mixture of entitlement, desperation, and genuine regret that made even her harshest critics uncomfortable. During cross-examination, the prosecution methodically dismantled Camilla's justifications. They showed that her royal allowance, combined with her personal income, should have been more than sufficient for a comfortable lifestyle. The evidence of expensive gambling trips, luxury purchases, and payments to her children demonstrated that the thefts had funded choices rather than necessities. Catherine attended every day of the trial, sitting quietly in the public gallery to show support for William and the prosecution's case. Her presence was noted by court observers, who saw it as a demonstration of the royal family's commitment to seeing justice served, regardless of personal relationships or potential embarrassment. The trial also revealed previously unknown details about Diana's investigation of the thefts. Expert witnesses testified about the sophistication of her documentation and the personal risks she had taken to gather evidence. A former palace security guard, now retired, testified that Diana had asked him unusual questions about jewelry, storage and access procedures in the months before her death. International cooperation in recovering stolen pieces continued throughout the trial period. Law enforcement agencies in France, Switzerland, Monaco, and the United States worked together to track down additional items and identify buyers. Each recovery was announced publicly, creating a steady stream of positive news that balanced the negative publicity surrounding the trial. One particularly significant recovery involved a sapphire and diamond necklace that had been a wedding gift to Queen Elizabeth from her father. The piece had been sold to a private collector in Monaco, who had unknowingly displayed it at several charity events. When the collector learned of its stolen status, they not only returned it immediately, but also provided additional information that helped track down other pieces. The defense's attempts to shift blame to palace security procedures and lack of proper oversight were undermined by expert testimony about the sophistication of existing security measures. James, the head of palace security, explained how Camilla had exploited her trusted position and intimate knowledge of royal routines to circumvent multiple layers of protection. Public opinion throughout the trial remained strongly supportive of William and the royal family's handling of the crisis. Polls showed that most British citizens respected the decision to pursue criminal charges rather than handle the matter privately. Diana's posthumous reputation was further enhanced by revelations about her secret efforts to protect royal heritage. The prosecution's final arguments emphasized the cultural and historical significance of the stolen items, arguing that Camilla's crimes represented not just theft, but an attack on British heritage itself. They noted that some pieces might never be recovered and that the trust necessary for the royal family to function had been severely damaged by her actions. Camilla's final statement to the court was a mixture of apology and continued justification that satisfied no one. She expressed regret for the pain caused to the royal family, while still maintaining that financial pressures had left her with few alternatives. Her inability to take full responsibility for her choices was noted by legal experts as likely to influence her sentencing. The jury deliberated for 3 days before returning guilty verdicts on all charges of theft, fraud, and conspiracy. The 4-women's reading of the verdicts was met with silence in the packed courtroom, as everyone understood they were witnessing a historic moment in British legal and royal history. William felt a complex mixture of relief and sadness as the verdicts were announced. Justice had been served and his mother's courage had been vindicated, but the personal cost to his family had been enormous. The woman who had been his stepmother for years would now face years in prison, and the scandal would be part of royal history forever. King Charles, who had not attended the trial but had been briefed daily on proceedings, issued a statement praising the justice system and reaffirming the royal family's commitment to transparency and accountability. He announced that additional security measures would be implemented and that a comprehensive review of all royal assets would be conducted annually. As the trial concluded and sentencing approached, William began planning the next phase of his mother's legacy. The recovered jewelry would be displayed in a special exhibition that would tell Diana's story and educate the public about the importance of preserving cultural heritage. Her courage in protecting these treasures would become an inspiration for future generations. 1 year after Camilla's sentencing to 8 years in prison, William stood in the newly opened Diana Spencer Heritage Gallery at Buckingham Palace. The exhibition space had been created specifically to honor his mother's memory and showcase the recovered jewelry alongside the story of her courage in protecting royal heritage. Sunlight streamed through specially designed windows, creating rainbows that danced across the display cases containing the precious pieces Diana had saved. The opening ceremony was attended by dignitaries from around the world, including representatives from museums and cultural institutions that had assisted in recovering the stolen items. William delivered a speech that brought many attendees to tears as he described his mother's secret sacrifice and the long journey to justice that had followed his discovery of her hidden collection. Catherine had worked tirelessly to ensure that the exhibition told Diana's story with dignity and accuracy. Interactive displays allowed visitors to learn about each piece of jewelry, its historical significance, and the role it had played in Diana's investigation. The centerpiece was Diana's original jewelry box, displayed exactly as William had found it, with her handwritten notes visible through protective glass. The public response to the exhibition exceeded all expectations. Visitors from around the world came to see not just the magnificent jewelry, but to pay tribute to Diana's courage and integrity. Many left flowers and notes expressing their admiration for a princess who had risked everything to protect her country's heritage. The exhibition became one of the most popular attractions in London, with advance bookings extending months into the future. King Charles had initially worried that the scandal would damage the monarchy's reputation permanently. Instead, the royal family's handling of the crisis had actually strengthened public confidence in their integrity and commitment to justice. Polls showed increased support for the monarchy, with many citizens expressing pride in William's courage and the family's transparency throughout the investigation. The international cooperation that had facilitated the recovery of stolen jewelry led to new protocols for protecting cultural heritage worldwide. UNESCO invited William to address their annual conference on art crime prevention, where he spoke about the importance of international cooperation and the role that technology could play in tracking stolen artifacts. Personal healing within the royal family proved more complex than the public relations success. King Charles struggled with guilt about bringing Camilla into the family and missing the signs of her criminal behavior. Therapy sessions with trusted counselors helped him process the betrayal while maintaining his ability to lead the monarchy effectively. Prince Harry, despite his complicated relationship with the royal family, had played a crucial role in supporting the investigation. The crisis had brought the brothers closer together as they united around protecting their mother's legacy and ensuring that her sacrifice was properly honored. Their joint appearances at the exhibition opening signaled a healing in their relationship that pleased royal watchers and the public alike. The recovered jewelry collection was more extensive than anyone had initially realized. As the investigation progressed, additional pieces were discovered in safety deposit boxes and private collections around the world. Each recovery was celebrated as a victory for cultural preservation and a vindication of Diana's courage in protecting these treasures. Several of the recovered pieces were selected for permanent loan to major museums, allowing the public to appreciate their beauty and historical significance. The Metropolitan Museum in New York, the Louvre in Paris, and the Victoria and Albert Museum in London each received pieces for special exhibitions that would travel internationally, spreading awareness of the importance of protecting cultural heritage. William established the Diana Spencer Heritage Foundation, funded by proceeds from the exhibition and donations from supporters around the world. The foundation works to protect cultural artifacts globally and provides resources for investigating art crimes. Its first major initiative was creating a digital database of stolen cultural items that law enforcement agencies could access worldwide. The impact on palace security procedures was comprehensive and permanent. New technologies were implemented to track every piece in the royal collection, with multiple verification systems required for any access to storage areas. The old system of trust-based security was replaced with protocols that would make future thefts virtually impossible, while still allowing appropriate access for exhibitions and ceremonies. Camilla's children, who had initially been ostracized by society, gradually found acceptance as they demonstrated genuine remorse for their mother's actions and worked to make amends. They cooperated fully with authorities in recovering any gifts or inheritances that might have come from stolen items, and they established a fund to help compensate collectors who had returned stolen pieces. The legal precedents established during Camilla's trial influenced art crime prosecutions worldwide. Her case became a textbook example of how trusted individuals could exploit their positions to commit sophisticated thefts, and law enforcement agencies around the world adapted their procedures based on lessons learned from the investigation. As William walked through the exhibition on its first anniversary, he reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with his decision to sort through his mother's belongings. What started as a painful attempt to process grief had become a quest for justice that had honored Diana's memory and strengthened the monarchy she had served. The final display case in the exhibition contained a simple handwritten note from Diana, enlarged so visitors could read her words. "These treasures belong to our nation and our history. I will protect them until someone else can carry this responsibility." Below it, William had added his own tribute. "My mother's courage in protecting. Our heritage reminds us that doing what is right is always worth the personal cost." The Diana Spencer Heritage Gallery had become more than just an exhibition of recovered jewelry. It was a testament to the power of truth, the importance of courage, and the enduring legacy of a princess who had continued to protect her country, even from beyond the grave. Visitors left understanding that heritage belongs to everyone and that sometimes it takes extraordinary bravery to preserve it for future generations. William knew that his mother would be proud of what her secret sacrifice had ultimately accomplished. The stolen jewels had been returned to their rightful place, justice had been served, and Diana's true character had been revealed to the world. Her legacy was no longer just about compassion and charity, but also about integrity, courage, and the willingness to do what was right, regardless of personal cost.